I want to give a quick disclaimer before this video starts. Nintendo hosting a competitive league with content around the comp scene for months is really cool. It's genuinely huge support that I think is really important for the scene as a whole. And while I'm going to try and give a fair review of the event and be as unbiased as I possibly can, I think it's important to note this is a place of wanting to see things like this continue. Furthermore, this is about the 10-week normal league season, as the playoffs have not happened as of the time of writing, and are pretty much a different event. With that being said, let's see how this stacks up, and subscribe if you enjoy. First up, let's talk about the format for the map and mode combinations for the event. This was a all modes tournament, including Turf War, which is about to be expected with a Nintendo event. However, normally the early stages of the tournament are Turf War only, and then the end stages have been ranked modes for like pretty much every single one of these for almost a decade now. In this case though, the format actually stayed consistent, which is that the winning team gets to pick one of the 5 modes, and the losing team picks one of the 10 stages. However, modes and maps cannot be repeated, so in the latter stages, where it's best of 3, you would have to play at least 3 of the modes. And in the bracket best of 5 set, you would have to play all of them if you went to a game 5, which I think was fine. First off, it's a Nintendo event, so again, it's expected that they're going to want all the modes to be played, and 2, I think the qualifying format having overall less Turf War made it feel more fair, and I liked having the format be consistent throughout. While I of course do think Zones Only is a better overall format for purely top-level competitive play, I do think all modes felt a bit better than I expected. There were 2 main modes that had some concern here, the first one being Turf War. Honestly, in Splatoon 3, I feel like it's a lot less prone to random deaths costing the game at the end with tactical cooler existing, and there was enough of an emphasis on fighting weapons and a lack of broken survivability specials in this game to keep comps interesting. Reflux is also a staple in Turf War, which I found quite healthy, especially now that it has 2 interesting hits we see, and I found it very fun and exciting to watch. While I still consider Turf to have a lot of downsides, mainly that the leading team earlier in the game is not proportionally rewarded like it is in ranked modes, the results of Turf War matches did overall feel fun and competitive. Rainmaker is the other mode with concern around it, and I think here we honestly just got lucky with the patch notes buffing Vacuum. I know not everyone is a fan of Vacuum forcing Rainmaker pushes, but listen, before this buff, Rainmaker was the most defensive and campy it's ever been, to the point of crowds booing it land. While these moments are not alleviated entirely, the threat of a special that can force aggressive pushes and punish teams for hanging back and playing overly defensive is exactly the kind of solution this game needs. Like with Turf, it doesn't save the mode, but it feels a lot closer to the other ones in terms of quality. I like seeing much more aggressive and threatening pushes, and matches that felt a lot less stall heavy. This was also boosted though by the format and maps. Like I said before, there were only 10 stages total for this event, which is a bit lower than usual for a Nintendo event, though because you could play all 5 modes, it was a total of 50 combinations. This is way higher than our usual 25 stages in a Zones Only format, or 16 to 24 combination in an all modes map list. However, I do think the stage choices were overall solid. Many stages that were less good for competitive play, and especially in an all modes format, were absent from this event, such as Sturgeon, Eeltail, or Lemuria, and so on. There were still some awful combos in there, but for the most part, the stage selection is actually quite solid. You definitely need a larger amount because of the format too. Stages cannot be repeated, so there needs to be a decent amount to pick from later into a set for the losing team. Speaking of that, I actually found it kind of interesting. The winning team getting to pick the mode made it impactful on their decision. It kind of reminded me of stage striking in the game like Smash, and I felt that brought a lot of intrigue as to what the losing team should actually pick. There were back and forth interactions that made it really cool to see what would happen. For example, in week 1, Moonlight would actually counterpick to Turf War in a set they were down 0-2 on, and both Turf and Urchin were bad charger options, which is the comp that they mostly relied on at the time. Because of that, this gamble burned both of them at the same time, preventing it from being used in 2 future games, and they ended up reverse sweeping the set. Now, I still think you could ideally drop the stage total to around 8 and still have plenty, but overall it's a nitpick. I think the longer format gives teams more times to learn the maps, and my only major critique is that if this was announced a little bit sooner, it might have given more time for the teams to prep the exact map modes they needed to practice. But if you weren't doing the preseason, you still got like a month, which is pretty good. With our first large topic aside, let's speedrun quite a few obvious wins. The Sunday Scrim being an event for Salmon Run is pretty cool. Obviously, the League Show is great at showcasing the community and bringing content to these events, and I also really like the preseason as an idea. Allowing players to get used to the format without the stakes involved could be quite helpful, and the lack of top-level teams in the first 2 weeks gave the spotlight to others who are close to that level. I also think that the tournament casts were really good, and I appreciated the commentary analysis and credit being given to the spectator cam. There's just a whole lot of things going on with the production that really bolstered the overall event quality. Alright, now let's talk about the main part that has come under criticism from the players in this event, and it's something I can't help but agree with, and that is the duration. Let's first start by talking about the ladder stage. This is a format that is 3 hours long and allow teams to queue whenever they want, where you'll be matched with people with similar records to you. At the end of those 3 hours, the 8 teams with the highest overall ranking will qualify. Now, to be honest, ladder is not that good a format when it comes to the top end. It is made to be an accommodating experience. If you're a new team who doesn't care about qualifying, there's no check-in to worry about, you can play as much as you want or as little as you want. You could play near the start or at the end only or in the middle, and you get matches near your level, and for, the bottom half of teams in the event, it's probably a really good format. But if you're here to try and make top 8, it's gonna show some issues. Mainly if you want to qualify, you need to try to play as many matches as possible. You can have a worse win-loss record, but more sets and rank above other teams. This has to be the case after all, otherwise the strategy would just be dodging all the good teams and sitting on a perfect 5-0 record in order to qualify. What this means though is all the teams trying to qualify are playing all 3 hours, with basically no breaks between sets. It's better to go as fast as possible, which is really grueling, but it's most effective. You're also subject to match RNG. In week 4, FTWin almost didn't qualify, in large part because they got unlucky, matching against Milky Way twice in ladder. They went on to place second in the bracket, and they only made top 8 because they found an extra match just minutes before the ladder closed. This also means the seeding in top 8 can feel more random. Some teams are in top 8 with much more stacked matches than other teams. Now look, on its own, it's not a deal breaker. The teams are used to it, and once you get to top 8, it's a more normal format. So it's not like it matters too much there. The real problem though, is that whole situation is only half the event. After an hour break, top 8 begins. It's on the same day and it runs for another 4-ish hours on average. This means the top 8 teams are playing around 6 to 8 hours for one event. For Splatoon, this is quite long. Major events of this length are usually 2 days, and events like Sendoku Major, which is a 1-day event, are about 5 hours. And that's another 2-stage event, being a Swiss 2 top 4 cut. And remember, this isn't a one-time thing, you're dealing with all of this. You ideally need to play at least 5 weeks to have a good chance of qualifying for top 8. And that's assuming you place well enough to have enough points for the top 8 finals all 5 weeks. That's not gonna be everyone. That said, the top 8 format is also this long because it's geared toward these teams. It has a solid counterpick system, double elimination, best of 5 sets, all the things that teams at this level like. This is ultimately the big reason to this tournament length though. Ladder is meant to be accommodating to most teams, while top 8 accommodates the higher level teams. But by doing both at the same time, the duration becomes very overwhelming. This is normally the part where I like to propose my own solution, but I'm not a TO. And honestly, I'm not sure what the best way to cutting the duration down is without sacrificing either group. I do have one tiny suggestion. It kind of dances around the problem, but right now you can play up to 5 tournaments in a row and score unique points for them. And if you play any more, it will just use your best 5 performing tournaments. That amount could be lowered to 4, meaning that teams would in theory have 1 less week that they would have to play. It still has very long Saturdays, but at least you wouldn't have to deal with as many of them. That might at least slightly alleviate the problem. That said, I think that there is probably a solution to making this at least a little bit better, and I hope we can see that next time. And that issue aside, I hope it's really obvious how the overall event is pretty positive, and the support for the scene is really great. I hope this kind of thing can continue in the future, and it was great to see how much of the NA scene turned out to make these events memorable. So, thanks so much for the event, and I hope you all have enjoyed this review.